Hello! Welcome to the channel. I'm the self-proclaimed Blue Dragon. This week I wanted to start introducing a project that I've been working on for the Aradia Magical People Collective. And so this week it's totally tubular because the zine that we are working on is scheduled to be released later this year, which is going to have a big-ass Kickstarter. It's about the 90s. And so I'm working on a sketch that just really inspiration hit for Kanna, who is from my free Not Safe for Work webcomic Dark Horse, links down in the description. I just really got inspired for this pose and for this image, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about it. At the end of the video, I'm going to show you how she turned out. However, because I am contractually obligated to not show you finished pieces, you're not going to see Rena, or at least you're not going to see the finished version of Rena, and I'm not going to show you the finished poster, which is what I'm working on this character design for, specifically is for a poster. I'm also working on a 7-page zine comic submission for this 90s themed zine. So I'll be giving you updates on that as I work on it, as I work on the project. But today we're doing a quick vid. We're going to talk about this character design, a little bit about Kanna, and why I made the choices that I did. So when I was thinking up what I wanted Kanna to be wearing, some of the resources I had looked at were blogs and images that some of the other members and contributors, we did open this up to the public, so there are people who are not part of the collective who contributed some research and are contributing pieces to this zine. But I kind of took a gander at a lot of the resources that they shared, and then I myself found like a video where the host did like a deep dive into a lot of Naoko Takeuchi's fashion influences for the manga Sailor Moon, because she, a lot like Araki, who does JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, she also is very heavily influenced by like fashion. So I shared that video, I watched that, and I also watched a video from Mina Lee. I'll be putting these links down in the description just for anyone who's interested and wants to go check those out themselves. But Mina Lee is a YouTuber who talks a lot about fashion, and a while back she'd actually done a video on the Nanny, which also was, popular in the 90s. So I took inspiration from like a lot of these different places, and I just kind of, for some reason something clicked. And this sketch of Kanna just came so incredibly easily. And personally, I feel the finished piece is one of my more professional, one of my better pieces that I've created. When I say finished piece, I mean this specific part of the piece. So I'm really proud of how this turned out. So let's talk a little bit about the fashion, and I'm also going to be talking about the colors, even though you're not going to see that until the end of the video because I'm not working on the colors, I'm working on the sketch and, fixing proportions and stuff, flipping her, doing all that jazz. What I ended up putting Kanna in is a turtleneck and tank top combination. Of course, the tank top is tucked into what is going to be a very loud, colorful neon green and neon pink plastic clasped belt. A belt that I actually remember my sister, I think, owning. It wasn't actually a belt, that was actually, like, they used to have these, like, t-shirt things where you could take your t-shirt and like weave it through this like plastic loop, and then like you had like this thing, like this Daisy Duke thing going on where she used to like pull her shirt up and it would be like kind of tied off and your belly would be showing. That was really popular in like the 90s, but instead of doing that with Kanna, because she's way more, she's way too conservative for that, I actually just incorporated that like little piece of nostalgia for myself into her fashion. So that's what the belt, what's going on with the belt and everything. She's also got a charm bracelet on. We've actually seen this in Dark Horse in The Uninvited, that chapter. She and Rena actually have this matching best friends bracelet. Those were super popular in the 90s, and while in the comic Kanna actually has it on a chain, it's one of those charms that you can actually move around, so she, if she wants to wear something and accessorize differently, since she's wearing her rosary in this image, which is an important facet of this specific character, she can change it up, and that's what I decided to do for this image. Also, she's got a headband on. I had created a print design that was like super 90s inspired several years back for like doing a character piece, like a little chibi of Nikki, who has not been introduced to Dark Horse yet. But I repurpose that pattern all the time. It's kind of based on like a popular pattern from the time period, so I went ahead and put that on her headband, and I just had to include a headband because there was a joke going around the collective about like Clarissa Knows It All. I never watched that because I didn't have like cable or satellite or anything when I was a kid. But I do remember Sabrina the Teenage Witch. That was the show that I liked and I watched. And I'm pretty sure she still had headbands. It's the same actress. I can't remember her name. But I'm pretty sure she still had like a headband in that as well. So, the turtleneck, obviously, turtleneck is fairly conservative, and that falls in line with like how Kanna dresses, but it's still, you know, like fairly fashionable, fairly with it in terms of like what was popular at the time period, because she's got the skirt on, she's got some pedal pushers to make sure that her bum's not hanging out, because this isn't fan service, y'all. And also, you know, she's like 14, her parents would not let her walk out of the house with such a short skirt on without having something on underneath it, either culottes or something. Well, not culottes, what are they called? You know, like pair of like biker shorts or something, you know. But she's got like the used to call them pedal pushers. I think they were called that in like the 60s or the 50s. My mom always called them pedal pushers. I guess we would call them like capris maybe now. Maybe? I don't know. I thought capri was just like anything that was like not like the full length. It's like the equivalent of like a quarter length sleeve. I don't know. Anyway, she got her old grandma shoes on. She wore those in the Uninvited as well. So I wanted to make sure that I'm like kind of incorporating that, you know, people wear the same clothes, even though it's obviously a fantasy comic. I wanted to make sure she's got like, you know, clothing that we've kind of seen before in the comic. And then the skirts, which I'm super proud of. You'll see the pattern in the finished image, but Kanna actually came from a private school a couple years ago. She transferred to the public school that Rena attended, and that's how they actually met. Because she was like a newcomer, she was kind of an outcast. She used to be super popular at her Catholic school, but when she ended up, you know, at this public school, you know, she was a new kid, nobody knew her, she was kind of ostracized a little bit, and that's how she ended up being friends with Rena, who was also a little bit out there and weird in her own way and not particularly popular. But before that, she went to a Catholic school as she started to kind of outgrow the old skirt because it could still fit her. And her mom, while, you know, they are a fairly like conservative family, her mom still like relates to what it was like to be a teenager. And so she and her mom actually repurposed that skirt that was actually from her Catholic school uniform. So that's where this specific outfit came from. I ended up using like the Clan Campbell Scottish pattern for like her skirt because I couldn't remember or find what kind of pattern I originally had used for it. So it's like a blue tartan pattern that she's got on. But it would have looked similar to this chibi that I had drawn several years ago, about the same time that I'd made the 90s like inspired pattern for Nikki's pants. And of course, to top off her 90s accessories, she's also got a plastic pink purse. The purse is hanging off of what is her right shoulder, left to us when we're looking at her. You can't see that that I've tried to make it look a little plastic in like the sketching, but yeah, in the finished piece you'll see that I tried to add a little bit of the saran wrap filter. Because this is going to be like a printed zine, I have to work in CYMK color coding. So the colors don't look as vibrant as I am hoping they will look whenever it is actually printed, because you're going to be looking at this, you're seeing it through like an RGB filter. Like that's how a lot of screens, it's the kind of coloring that a lot of computer screens have. So yeah, the colors, I tried to pick colors that'll look bright. It might not be like the most neon, and I'm just hoping that when it prints, it will be fairly neon. Since I had, like I said, I had to work in like CYMK. To top off the image, when I show you the finished version of her, I also added like some pink lipstick and light blue eyeshadow because that had come back from like the 60s. Like the 60s, especially towards like the end of the 1990s. 60s nostalgia, like from our parents, from a lot of our parents, I should say, was starting to get really popular. You know, they redid like the Brady Bunch movies. Scooby-Doo came back again. Scooby-Doo is never going anywhere. I love Scooby-Doo, by the way. but also like a lot of the fashions and the music, you know, like that's what got me into the Beatles. Was like in the 1990s, 1996, 97, they'd released like the Beatles anthology, which was like this big series, this big television event that really like introduced me to the Beatles. Like my parents listened to the Beatles, but I did not care that much about them. Like I always liked Yellow Submarine, and I always liked Get Back. They played that on the radio. I think I liked Hey Jude, but like I never really paid that much attention to the Beatles. Like I would listen to the 90s pop station, WDBR, or I would listen to WQLZ for like the 90s alternative and rock music. But in the 1990s, because of like this resurgence of the 1960s nostalgia, like a lot of us got really big into like the 60s again, and then like later on that would like lead me to listening to Fish and Oasis. I'd already been interested in anyway because that did get played a bit on the pop stations, but like I really got into Blur and stuff, you know, like all these groups that were heavily influenced by the 90s. All this stuff was kind of happening at the time period. So that's kind of was the inspiration for like the makeup that Kanna's wearing. And then when we see Rina, this is why in the comic, because it is set in the late 1990s, Rina's going to have that 60s inspiration a little bit more evident in her outfit. But I also pulled a little bit from like Britney Spears, because even though I wasn't like particularly a big fan of pop music by the time Hit Me Baby One More Time, or Baby One More, whatever the fuck the name of that song is. Even though that wasn't like nostalgia really so much for me, it was kind of like the antithesis of what I was into. I mean, it's fine now, it's pop music, it's whatever, there's nothing wrong with it. And I do like some other songs by Britney Spears that came like out in the 2000s. But I digress. I will say that like I am gonna have like a little bit of influence from like that, because even though I don't personally like it, I feel it would have been right in line with like Rina. Rina's not like, she's not like how I was when I was a teenager. I was one of those, oh my god, these boy groups suck, and oh my god, girl bands suck, and pop is so lame, and blah blah blah. I really just like hated everything. But I didn't really, you know, I just kind of, like, I liked it, but, like, I was too embarrassed to admit that I liked it. So, like, Rina is, like, totally not like that at all. I think she would definitely be, even though she likes 60s music and stuff, I think she definitely would have been into, like, the pop music of the time period. Anyway, that's really all I've got to say on this piece. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great rest of the week. I will be back Wednesday with another video, probably talking a little bit more about some of this project. Until then, peace and love. Fare you well, and keep on trucking.